We are. Look at us. We're going live. All right. So welcome again. Thank you for being with us this morning. How are we feeling? Good. Good. Okay. How are we feeling? Yeah. And I really ask that question from a place of authenticity. I'm asking that question not because I expect to hear, I'm fine. If there is any place in the week, in your life, that you should be able to not be fine, I think this is it. My prayer for you is that there are other places, but if this is the only one, and I step up to you with that big Irish smile that I have, and all that enthusiasm and all that energy, and I say, how you doing? It would be okay to say, you know what? I don't like today very much. It would be authentic to say, you know what? It doesn't fit today. I don't get it today. When we step away from that authentic self, what happens in that moment is you tell me it's not okay to not be fine. I worked in a grocery store in high school. Oops, what am I doing here? Looky there. I worked in a grocery store in high school. There's a fabulous man that owned that grocery store, still owns it, one and only grocery store in the town I'm from. And he'd walk up to you and he'd say, hi, how are you? Good. And he didn't hear a word you said. Hi, how are you? Good. And that was his job. I get that. But we're all friends here. Well, I'm hoping. And what today is about is loving your limits, embracing your dark side. Now, limits is not a word you hear a lot of in Unity. We are limitless. The daily word tells us we are. And we are limitless. We are as expansive as the universe. And all things are possible. And sometimes it doesn't go the way we want it. Some days it doesn't feel good. Some days it's hard to be a human. Some days it's hard to be a nice human. This from the book, Let Your Life Speak, written by Parker Palmer. This is the third week of a series from the book, Let Your Life Speak. And today, as you see, is about loving your limits and embracing the dark side. Now, I thought about having a Darth Vader mask, but I thought that might be a little over the top. And I certainly can't make that voice. I am your father. However, I can share this with you. Each of us arrives here with a nature, which means both limits and potentials. We can learn as much about our nature, our true self, by running into our limits, as much as experiencing our potential. Some days I run right into my limits about 150 miles an hour. How about you? Some days I'm more human than I want to be. Some days my limits show up really big. And I have to remind myself that I am a divine child of God. Do you ever have one of those moments? Just one? Somebody tell me you have one, so I don't feel like I'm flying solo here. Loving our limits. In this series, we talked about, instead of telling your life what to do, maybe you should ask it what it has to say. Maybe you should check in and see Maybe your life has something it really wants to share, and you just haven't given it permission yet. Because somewhere along the way, you may not have been given permission to be the grandest expression of yourself. It could happen, I've heard. It could happen. And then last week, Alex shared with us, where is your joy? And he talked about stepping into your authentic joy. And he reminded us. And I so appreciate being reminded of this when I had coffee with Matt and Josie this week. We're doing the best we can in the moment that we're doing it. We're doing that. So today, kind of springboarding off of that concept, we get to look at the limits and the dark side of who we might be. And I'm going to do that with as much joy as I can possibly do, because that's how I show up. Even when I don't feel like it sometimes. Now, that can be applicable. That's okay. But when I am sitting in that silence, and when I am sitting across from you, and I am supporting you, and I am with you, and I'm holding this ministry in the light, it is my job to show up authentically. The only thing God asks of us is to show up as the being that we were intended to be. Nothing more, but nothing less. And some days that will look different than others. So, all things are possible. We've heard that all our lives, right? All things are possible. And in unity, you betcha. All things are possible. And what I learned in the study of this series is this. They are possible. However, does that mean that I'm going to, as a 5'2", almost 60-year-old woman, be able to firm myself into playing in the NBA? Can't you see it? Can't you imagine that? Don't. No, that's a bad vision. I can affirm all day long. I can absolutely claim I am an NBA player. I'm an NBA fan. I am an NBA player. Not really. And I can affirm that all day long. And in unity, what we say is we create the world by the thoughts that we hold. So now how do I reconcile that? If all things are possible, then I ought to be in the playoffs. If anybody's an NBA fan, you know, that's the time of year we're getting into, right? Okay. Maybe not so many NBA fans, but I know. I can affirm all day long. I can affirm all day long that I am going to be a hockey player. Now that would be a sight, wouldn't it? You can affirm all day long that you are going to be, I don't know, what do you want to be? I'm going to be Peter Pan, because I don't like the idea of getting old. This morning I had a little conversation with Rosemary, Sean and Christina's little one running around. She had a birthday this week. She was 8 years old, and I said, wow, do you realize I am a half of a decade older than you? And Sean said, I don't want to poke holes in your theory, but that's a half of a century. Oops. Another limit. Never did know my age. Never have practiced it very well. And I liked that limit. But there are those that are not so cute, or so pretty, or so fun. And when I affirm all day long that I am going to be an NBA player, I am pushing rope uphill. That's what I'm doing. When we say all things are possible, I would like to give you a new thought about that. All things are possible. However, if we are not asking, if we are not in alignment with the true nature of who we are and the desire that we're holding, we are not authentic about what we say we want to be. Do you really think I want to be an NBA player? Come on. No, probably not. Not a true nature desire. But when I align with and I open myself to understanding the authentic person, the authentic being that I came here to be, then all things are possible. Because now I know from which I come. I remember where I'm going. I remember that it feeds my soul to hold that thought. I want to teach. I want people to know that they can have a bad day. I want to teach. I want people to know that there is always hope. Now that's authentic. It is for me. Scariest thing other than death that people are more afraid of, public speaking. Bring it on. Bring it on. I came here to teach. I came here to share. I came here to learn. And I learn more by preparing these Sunday mornings than I have ever learned in ministerial school. I learn more by sitting and having coffee. I learn more by connecting. I learn more by listening than I have ever been able to open or find in a book. But because that is an authentic desire from the true nature of who I am, the universe has spoken. I'm here. You're here. Where in your life are you asking for something that is as crazy as me being an NBA player? Where in your life? I want my child to show up differently. I want my spouse to be taller. I want whatever. I don't want it to snow. I don't want it to be cold in Flagstaff in the winter. That's pushing rope uphill. That is not an authentic desire, or you wouldn't be sitting in Flagstaff. You'd be somewhere where there are palm trees. And if you aren't happy with it, what you will do is you will start to move into that authentic desire, and you will start to express that in your life, and it, I am telling you, will show up. That little saying about be careful what you ask for. If it is aligned with your authentic self, if it is aligned with your true nature, it will show up. So get ready. Be willing to come back home to the authentic self so that your desires and your wants can align with what the universe is just begging to give you. Ever conspiring to bring you to your highest and your best. Last week, Alex reminded us, the world is not picking on us. The universe is not picking on us. It only chooses to be a part of your greatest expression. Are you willing? Carl Jung says this: honor our limits and find a way to integrate them into our lives. Now, Carl Jung wrote a lot about the dark side. Now, I don't mean the fact that you might eat a half a bag of potato chips when nobody's looking. I don't mean that you get angry at traffic. I'm talking about the dark side that causes you not to be the greatest expression of who you are. The one that gets in the way of letting your life speak. The one that separates you from your understanding the God, the Spirit, the divine that you have in your life. That's the dark side. And what I'm noticing and what I'm learning through this little conversation that we're having for this 3 or 4 weeks is this. When I embrace my dark side, when I embrace my limits, it opens me up and I stand in my true self, and now I can truly be available to a greater expression of who I am. This is why we're talking about this. This is why we're talking about this. So I want you to think, and please don't say anything out loud. Don't raise your hand. But I want you to consider a place, just a place in your life. Now, this is not about shame and blame, so let that go right now. I heard it coming. I saw it. I heard it. Let that go. Just consider a place in your life that you may be asking for something that is not from an authentic desire and from your true nature, or a place that separates you from knowing the highest and greatest expression of yourself. Do you have one? Just one? Do you have it? Stella doesn't. We came here like that. She's right here in this moment. And we have accumulated a lot of life. And we've created a lot of little corners in our life. So you got one? So if you're comfortable, just close your eyes for a minute. Each of us arrives here with a nature, which means both limits and potentials. We can learn as much about our nature by running into our limits, recognizing and acknowledging our dark side, as we can by experiencing our potential. Okay, so come back to me. Here's a really nice quote. Once we accept our limits, we can go beyond them. And I'm not really quite sure who said that. There was a little conversation about that. I actually have somebody that fact checks my quotes. How about that? Isn't that great? But here's a quote I know exactly how it got said. My grandma Maine used to say this: just try seeing yourself the way God does, and you will quickly remember that God don't make no junk. When we embrace who we are authentically, and we start to put that out to the universe, all things are possible. When we, as a community, realize who we are and are willing to embrace and love every dark corner of it, we will be invited to be our greatest self out there in that community. Who did you come here to be? And what is the limit that you're unwilling at this point in time to embrace and hold dear so that it might bless you? What is that? That's the invitation. That's the work. That's who we get to be. If you could see you from here, you'd know what I'm talking about. Because you're amazing. And God wants only to express that through you, regardless of how it's dressed and what it looks like. Come home to the authentic self. Be here with that. And know that you are loved.